Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how to sew and draft an A-line skirt with button fronts. That looks like I made a denim A-line skirt and it opens up with the buttons, so just like that. I'm also going to show you how to do the drafting for the pockets, the A-line skirt, the waistband, and the button front extension. For this skirt, I used a raw Japanese denim, and it looks like this. I bought this from McCulloch & Wallace. It's a really narrow width, so I needed about 2 meters of that. But if you're using like a 60-inch, you could just use 1 meter. And then I used woven fusible interfacing. I have white, but I think black would probably have been a bit better, to be honest. And then I used twill tape. So this is a 3/4 inch wide, and I think it's polyester, and that's to bind the inset to finish off the seams. And then for the top stitching, I used Gutermann, I think it's heavy duty thread. Don't buy the top stitching thread, it's way too thick. Get upholstery or heavy duty thread. I forgot to mention my buttons are 7/8 of an inch. And the buttonholes going down the front are vertical, and at the waist it's horizontal. That's because you get a little bit more movement at the waist for when you move. It gives a bit of ease, but then on the vertical, so that the buttons don't overlap the stitching on the extension. So I want my skirt to be A-line, so I'm starting with a basic skirt block, which is what this looks like. This is the back, there's 2 darts, and it's just a straight skirt. There's no seam allowances in this one. And this is what the front looks like. I had one made up and I just traced the skirt. And this horizontal line is the hip line. So I want it to be slightly A-line, and the way to do that is, instead of just drawing a line out like that, and then your hem might go a little bit odd. What you do is you cut a straight line from these darts all the way to the hem, and then you pivot, and you cut open your darts and pivot. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so you can see that I've cut it here, but it pivots along. So I can either close the whole dart up like that. If I close it completely, then you see that it becomes A-line. I actually want it to be slightly less A-line than that, so I'm just going to close it up halfway and still preserve. So I'm going to close it up halfway, and then I still preserve like a little dart there. So what I do is I get some tape, and I tape it down as much as I wanted to close the dart. So I was closing it about halfway. And then, so you'll see it's taped there. Then I get some paper and tape back here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So with the paper taped behind, you can see now that this is sort of formed into an A-line, and then I just take my ruler and I draw across this line here to make up a new hemline. Okay, so, and then the top of the skirt pattern, you'll want to smooth in the line from here. I used a ruler. I used a curved ruler, and then you want to redraw your dart leg if you kept the dart in. So you can see this is where I've redrawn the little dart leg right here. There. So now the dart's a lot smaller than it was before. And then you repeat the same process on the front. Alright, so to finish the rest of my pattern drafting, I'll show you what I did. So this is what the piece looks like. This is the one that was slashed and spread. So I made a waistband. So the waistband the width was determined by my button's size. So my button was 7/8 of an inch, so I added a 1/4 inch. So my waistband was 1 1/8 inch wide. And so you do that. I also lowered it from the center front 1/2 inch, and then tapered it with a curve to the side. So make the waistband by lowering it by 1 1/8 inch down that way, and you also do it on the back. And then I made a button front extension for my skirt. So it's like that. So it's 1/8 inch wide, the extension, but since it has a self-folding facing, it's 1/8 inch wide here, 1/8 inch wide here. So that's 2¼ inches wide in total, and it will fold over like that. So these are without seam allowances at the moment. And then I had to extend my waistband over. So this is the center front, but since it's going to extend over the extension, it extends over here, and not this bit, but just over here, so 1/8 inch that way. So you do that all the way down to the bottom. And then I drew in a pocket. So ignore this bit here. So you can see that the dart is like right here. So you want the pocket not to include the dart. So I drew in a bit here, and then I drew in a straight line down here and across here. Okay, so then I traced my pocket. So when I traced my pocket, I added 1/2 inch seam allowances all the way around. And I traced my back. It's pretty straightforward. So this is my back. This is the center back, so that's going to be on the fold. And I added 1/2 inch seam allowances all the way around. And I traced my hip line and the darts. And then for the waistband, when you trace the waistband, you don't want your darts in the waistband. So this was that button extension here, and then I traced over to this first part, which would have been the side of the dart, and I skipped over the dart and continued tracing here, skipped over the dart, continued tracing, and here's the side front, so that part corresponds with this. And then I connected to that to the side back, which corresponds, side back corresponds, sorry, this is the side front. And then what I did is I pretty much just connected them along here. Yeah, this will be the side. And I continued tracing over here, and then I skipped over the dart, continued tracing here, skipped over the dart, and then this is the center back, which is on the fold. And then I added seam allowances, so 1/4 inch along the top, 1/4 inch along the side, the center, which is the buttonhole extension, and 1/2 inch along the bottom, and the center back is going to be on fold. And then for the front piece, so this is the front piece. So this part is just traced normally. This is the side front, this is the hip line, these are the 2 darts. And then this here is the button front extension. So eventually it folds over like this. So I'm making bound buttonholes. So I cut out little holes to mark where my buttonholes are going to be. So I started the buttonhole on the top here. I started this 1/4 inch down from the top of the waist, and then I did 1 3/8 inch in between, 1/4 inch down, 1 3/8 inch in between, and the width is about 3/8 inch or 1/4 inch, somewhere around there, all the way at the bottom. And then at the bottom I did 1 inch hem, and then I added 1/2 inch seam allowance on this side, 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top, and 1/2 inch seam allowance on this side here. So that was my drafting, and now I'm ready to cut out and sew. Okay, so if you get your dart and you cut it off the top, so this is your back, you have this little bit here, this little section here, that's where your dart is, that corresponds to your dart. But since you don't want to sew a dart into your waistband, you just cut it out, and then you tape the bits back together like this. And then you do the same for this dart, and the same on the front for the darts. And then you would tape the sides together and then add your seam allowances. For the bound buttonholes, I cut out a strip. It's 1 inch wide, and it's as long as the buttonhole extension. I'm going to cut 2 of them, and eventually they become the lips of the buttonhole. Okay, so I've cut out all my pieces. So I have 2 of the waistbands, and I cut out 1 out of interfacing. And then I have the welts for my buttonholes. And then I have 2 pockets here, like that. Then I have my back. So when I mark my darts, I do notches in the seam allowance, like that, and then I put a pin in at the point of the dart. So put a pin in that side and that side. And separate that later when you're sewing it. You have to use the big pins with the pearl head or else they fall out really easily. And then for my front, I have 2 of that. Sorry, the back was cut in a fold. I have 2 of them, and I've marked my darts and with the pins, and then I also marked with chalk. I marked the location of my buttonholes in. So I'm ready to start sewing. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew my darts in, and then I'll do my buttonholes. After I cut out my pieces, what I did was, the first thing I did was I sewed in my darts. So this is the back piece. I sewed my darts. I just sewed from the bottom up, and then I tied a knot at the bottom. And then I top stitched using, I think like heavy duty or upholstery thread. Don't use the thread that's for top stitching because it's just too thick. So I just top stitched the darts like a 1/16 of an inch away from the dart, and I top stitched them away from the midline. So this is the back, and then this is one of the front pieces. Same thing. And then I put on this twill tape over the side seams. You could zigzag, but my zigzag on my machine is so slow. The way I did it is you fold your twill tape in half and you sew it in half a little bit. And then you put the needle down, you lift the presser foot and you slot your fabric in, and then you fold it and sew a straight stitch all the way down. I used white thread to match. And then when you get to the end, you keep sewing on the twill tape so it's so folded, and then you put your needle down, lift your presser foot, and then put in your next piece and keep going. That's the fastest way to do it, I've found. And so I did that on all the side seams, front and the back. And then I sewed my pockets, or I top stitched my pockets. So I pressed under 1/2 inch and I top stitched 3/8 of an inch. So this is the left pocket. And I used the upholstery thread for the top stitching. And then for the welts, for the bound buttonholes, I put them right sides together, like that, and then I sewed them down the middle. And then when you open it up, I used a basting stitch for that. So when you open it, you have your welts, but they'll be basted shut together. And then after I did all that sewing, I went and did some ironing. So I ironed out, so I pressed my interfacing, I ironed my interfacing onto my waistband on one side. I don't do both sides, I just do one side. So the interface side will be on the inside and the uninterfaced side will be on the outside. And then for my buttonholes, I cut them open. And I'll show you how I did that and do that in a second. And I pressed them open. It looks very messy, so I would not recommend doing it the way I did. So what I did do though is so this is your buttonhole that you have marked on your fabric. And then I cut it like that. And then I press these bits out. I take a seam ripper and dig it into the middle to get a snip started, and then I use my scissors to cut out. So eventually how that's going to work is I'm going to sew this guy onto the back of the buttonholes, and then when you fold over, it'll be the front. And you stitch around the buttonholes. And I also ironed So this is the back, or sorry, this is the front, and then I ironed this back at the markings we made, and then I also folded under 1/2 inch. Oh, also on the pockets, I zigzag stitched the side here, but I'm not going to zigzag stitch that. Next time what I would have done is I would have actually sewn the pocket onto the front first and then put my twill tape over. Okay, so I've sewn in my buttonholes, and what I did is, they don't look great, so what I did do though is on the back side I sewed the welts on, and I just kind of sewed a straight line all the way down vertical right beside the buttonholes, and then I went back and did the same thing on the other side, and then I did the horizontal parts just on the back side, and then I folded my buttonhole extension over, and I matched the welts, and then I sewed a little square around each buttonhole, and then I top stitched it down like 1/8 of an inch from this side, and then I folded this bit over like 1/2 inch underneath, and then I top stitched that down 1 inch from the side. Before I top stitched though, I trimmed the welts on the inside, so they don't look great, to be honest. So you might be better off looking up a tutorial online and following directions to that instead of doing it this way. On the other side, which is where the buttons are going to be sewn onto, I top stitched it down 1/8 of an inch here, and then 1 inch over here from the edge, and that looks good. And then I put on my pockets, so I just top stitched them down 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and then basted it into the seam, and then I sewed the seam together. Then I sewed the seam together 1/2 inch, and I did the same thing on the other pocket, like that. And then for the waistband, what I did was I sewed the top of the waistband 1/4 of an inch, so it's 1/4 of an inch going this way, and then it's 1/4 of an inch going this way as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the waistband to the right side and give it a good press, and I'm also going to press my seams open, press them open like that, and then I'm going to put some twill tape along the hem edge. Okay, so this is my finished skirt. It looks like this. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. To finish off the waistband, what I did was I pressed it inside out, or pressed it right out. I clipped the corners in order to get the corners to lie flat, and then I pressed up 1/2 inch on both the front and the back, and then I just put it over top of the skirt. So I just slotted it over the top of the skirt, and then I just did like an 1/8 inch top stitch all the way around, and that works well, saves a lot of steps. And then for the top buttonhole, I just did a buttonhole by hand, but I'll probably do my machine the next time. And in sewing the waistband, the interfacing is on the inside. So the outside layer is the non-interfaced piece, and the inside layer is the interfaced piece. And then for the hem, I put the twill tape on, and I just cut at the edge, and then I sewed a 1 inch hem, and I also sewed this little bit here to keep this from flapping open. So it doesn't like open up right here. So I just sewed right there over top of where I had already top stitched, and then I went along and did a 1 inch hem. And that was pretty straightforward, and then I gave it a really good iron. I haven't added buttonholes on yet, but I'm going to end up adding them because I think I need a belt with the skirt. Overall, I was really happy with the way this turned out. It looks very close to my inspiration picture, which I'll put in the description. And I like the white buttons. Initially, I thought that they'd be really clashy, but they actually look really nice. It's really comfortable to wear. Surprisingly, the denim doesn't stick to tights or anything like that. And I think when it breaks in a little bit, because it's raw denim, it'll be even more comfortable. And I just wore this with a white t-shirt, or I think it would look really nice with like a white button-up shirt. Okay, I've put the skirt on and I'll get up and show you what it looks like. So it just looks like that, and it's kind of just above the knee, and it sits just at the waist, the natural waist, and I have it on with a white t-shirt, and the pockets sit here. I think next time I'll put the pockets a little bit lower down here, and then it opens and closes from the buttons. And the back is just kind of a straightforward plain denim skirt. Things I would do differently next time. Next time I'll skip the buttonholes and just do machine buttonholes. Or I do the buttonholes properly, not kind of the lazy way. I would make the pockets longer, so kind of towards here. I would make the waistband and the button front extension wider. So I'd probably make this, instead of 1 1/8 inch, I'd probably make it 1.5 inches, and likewise for this part here.